Most men never think deeply about who they allow access to their life. They only think about the moment in front of them. If the woman is attractive, if the chemistry feels strong, if the opportunity is easy, that becomes enough for them to move forward without asking themselves what comes after. And that is exactly where problems begin. Because the consequences of certain decisions rarely show up immediately. They build slowly, quietly, in ways most men do not notice until the situation has already started affecting their mind, their focus, and the direction of their life. A woman can look perfect on the surface and still bring confusion into your life. She can sound calm, intelligent, confident, and still carry habits, patterns, and behaviors that slowly pull you away from your own stability. Most men do not understand this because they only judge based on attraction. They focus on how they feel in the moment, instead of asking themselves what kind of energy they are inviting into their life long term. That lack of awareness is what causes many men to lose control without realizing it. The truth is, sleeping with someone is never just physical. Once that line is crossed, attachment begins to form. Emotions become involved, your thinking changes, your decisions begin shifting around the connection, even when you tell yourself it is casual. That is why some situations that looked harmless at the beginning eventually become stressful, distracting, and difficult to walk away from later. The dangerous part is that none of this feels serious in the beginning. It feels exciting, it feels harmless, it feels temporary. But many situations that damage a man's peace begin exactly that way. Small choices, quick decisions, moments that seemed insignificant at first, until suddenly they are affecting your time, your mindset, your routines, and your priorities in ways you never expected. Most men believe they can separate themselves emotionally from the women they deal with. They convince themselves that nothing serious will come from it, that they can enjoy the moment, walk away whenever they want, and continue living normally afterward. But real life does not always work that way. Because once intimacy enters the situation, things naturally become deeper. Even when you try to keep it casual, the connection still creates influence. It still affects your emotions, your attention, and the way you think moving forward. This is why choosing the wrong woman can quietly create problems that take months or even years to fully understand. At first, everything feels light. Conversations feel exciting. The energy feels fresh. You enjoy the attention, the validation, and the feeling of being wanted. Nothing about the situation appears dangerous. In fact, it often feels like something positive entering your life. That is why so many men ignore early signs. They assume if things feel good now, then nothing bad can come from it later. But problems rarely announce themselves at the beginning. They develop over time. Slowly, your focus begins shifting toward the situation. Your emotions become more involved. Your peace starts depending on how things are going with her. Now your mood changes based on her behavior. Your attention starts moving away from your goals, your routines, and the things that once kept you grounded. Without realizing it, the connection starts controlling more of your life than it should. This is where many men lose themselves. Not all at once, but gradually. One compromise at a time. One distraction at a time. One emotional attachment at a time. And by the time they recognize the effect, the situation is already deeper than they intended. That is why awareness matters before anything physical happens. Because once emotions and attachment enter the picture, logic becomes weaker. And when logic becomes weaker, people stay in situations they should have walked away from much earlier. The first type of woman you should never sleep with is a woman who is already committed to someone else. It does not matter how attractive she is, how understanding she seems, or how convincing her explanation sounds. The moment a woman is married, engaged, living with someone, or emotionally tied to another man, you are stepping into a situation that already carries complications before you even enter it. And once you involve yourself in that kind of situation, those complications slowly become your problems too. Most of the time, she will try to make it sound reasonable. She will tell you the relationship is basically over. She will say they no longer connect emotionally. She might explain that they are only together because of children, finances, or history. And because everything sounds believable, many men convince themselves that what they are doing is harmless. But if the relationship was truly finished, she would already be out of it completely. That is the reality many men choose to ignore. The problem is not just the relationship itself. The problem is everything attached to it. There are emotions involved that you cannot control. There is history you do not fully understand. There are unresolved issues, hidden tensions, and consequences waiting beneath the surface. What starts as excitement can quickly turn into stress, drama, conflict, and situations that damage your peace. Another thing most men fail to understand is that secrecy itself creates pressure. You are constantly thinking about who knows, who might find out, and what could happen if the situation becomes exposed. That pressure slowly affects your mental state, even if you pretend it does not. And there is another uncomfortable truth. If a woman is willing to betray someone she already committed herself to, that behavior did not suddenly appear overnight. It reflects a deeper pattern in her character. So even if you think you are gaining something special in the moment, you are building a connection on unstable ground from the very beginning. Never sleep with a woman who is emotionally unstable, because situations like that may feel exciting in the beginning, but they slowly become exhausting over time. The signs usually appear early if you pay attention closely enough. Her emotions shift constantly. One moment she seems calm, affectionate, and completely connected to you. Then suddenly, without warning, the energy changes. Small situations become serious arguments. Minor misunderstandings turn into emotional reactions that feel far bigger than the situation itself. At first, many men ignore these signs because attraction blinds them. They tell themselves she is simply passionate, sensitive, or expressive. They believe things will calm down later once the connection becomes more stable. But emotional instability does not disappear just because intimacy happens. In many cases, it becomes even stronger after the relationship grows deeper. Because once attachment forms, emotions become heavier, reactions become more intense, and the situation becomes harder to manage. Over time, you start adjusting yourself to avoid triggering problems. You become careful with your words, careful with your actions, and careful with your honesty, because you never fully know how she will react. That constant tension slowly drains your energy. Instead of feeling relaxed around her, you begin feeling mentally exhausted. Your peace becomes dependent on her mood, and that is not a healthy position for any man to live in. Another danger is unpredictability. Emotionally unstable people often react emotionally before they think logically. That means situations can escalate quickly without warning. What should have been a simple conversation suddenly becomes conflict, silence, emotional pressure, or manipulation. And once you are emotionally attached, stepping away from that cycle becomes much harder than you expected. A lot of men believe they can save or fix someone through patience, attention, or love. But emotional instability is something that requires self-awareness and responsibility from the other person. If that is missing, your presence will not heal the situation. It will simply pull you deeper into emotional chaos that slowly affects your own stability too. Never sleep with a woman who treats every interaction like a transaction, because once you pay close attention, you will realize that nothing around her feels genuine. Every conversation, every moment of attention, and every level of affection seems connected to what she can gain from you. At first, it may not appear obvious. She might present it in subtle ways. She talks a lot about standards, expectations, lifestyle, or what a man should provide. And while there is nothing wrong with having standards, the problem begins when everything becomes tied to material benefit instead of real connection. You will notice that her energy changes depending on what she receives. When you provide something, she becomes warm, attentive, and interested. When you pull back, her effort changes too. That pattern tells you everything you need to know. Because in situations like that, the relationship is not built on genuine interest in you as a person. It is built on what you are able to offer consistently. And once that becomes the foundation, pressure naturally follows. The moment intimacy enters the situation, expectations become even heavier. Now she feels more entitled to your time, your attention, your money, or your resources. You slowly move from being someone she enjoys to someone she evaluates based on performance. That creates a dynamic where you constantly feel the need to maintain value in order to keep her interested, and that pressure eventually becomes exhausting. Another important thing to understand is that people who operate this way are usually always scanning for better opportunities. If someone else appears with more status, more money, or more access, their attention can shift quickly because the connection was never truly emotional to begin with. It was conditional from the start. That is why you should pay attention to motives early. A woman who only values what you provide will eventually make you feel like your worth depends entirely on what you can continue giving. And once a relationship becomes based on obligation instead of genuine connection, control quietly enters the situation without you realizing it at first. Never sleep with a woman who depends on attention to feel valuable, because no matter how exciting the situation feels at the beginning, you will eventually realize that her need for validation is stronger than her ability to build something stable. These women are usually easy to recognize if you stop focusing only on appearance and start paying attention to behavior. They constantly need reactions from people. They enjoy being admired, noticed, chased, and desired by everyone around them. Their energy is always directed outward toward attention instead of inward toward peace and stability. At first, many men mistake this for confidence. She seems social, charismatic, attractive, and full of energy. People naturally notice her, and being around her can make you feel important too. That is why many men become emotionally attached quickly. They feel lucky to have her attention. But what they fail to understand is that attention is not simply something she enjoys. It is something she emotionally depends on. And once someone depends on outside validation, one person will never truly be enough for them. Even after intimacy happens, the behavior usually continues. She still seeks reactions from other men. She still enjoys being desired publicly. She still places herself in situations where attention constantly flows toward her. And over time, that creates insecurity, confusion, and tension inside the connection. You start questioning things you never used to question. You wonder who else is in her messages, who else is trying to get her attention, and whether you are actually important to her or simply another source of validation. Another problem is that situations like this often create silent competition. You may never hear it directly, but you begin feeling compared to other men around her. That uncertainty slowly affects your confidence and your peace of mind. The truth is simple. If attention is her main priority, stability will never be. And once you become emotionally involved with someone like that, you often spend more time chasing reassurance than building something real. That is why smart men pay attention to behavior before they become attached emotionally or physically. Never sleep with a woman who makes your life feel too comfortable too quickly, because this is one of the most dangerous situations, precisely because it does not feel dangerous at all. Unlike drama, manipulation, or emotional instability, this type of situation feels peaceful on the surface. She supports you, removes pressure from your life, makes things easier, and creates an environment where you feel relaxed all the time. At first, that sounds perfect. Most men think they have finally found someone who truly understands them. But sometimes comfort can slowly weaken a man without him realizing it. When life becomes too easy too fast, discipline starts fading quietly in the background. You stop pushing yourself with the same intensity. You stop handling responsibilities with the same urgency. You begin depending on the comfort she provides, instead of maintaining the habits that once kept you sharp. And because the process happens slowly, most men do not recognize the change until their ambition, focus, and discipline have already started slipping away. The dangerous part is that nothing appears wrong on the surface. She is caring, she is helpful, she removes stress instead of creating it. That is why many men lower their guard completely. But growth has always required pressure, responsibility, and effort. The moment someone begins carrying too much of your weight for you, your own edge slowly starts disappearing. You become softer mentally, less disciplined, less driven, more comfortable staying still instead of continuing to grow. Another issue is attachment. Human beings naturally become attached to comfort. Once you get used to peace, support, and convenience, it becomes difficult to imagine life without it. So even when you start noticing that your focus is fading, you still struggle to step away because emotionally, the comfort already has control over you. This does not mean support is bad. The real issue is dependence. The moment a man stops challenging himself because someone else is making life too easy, he slowly loses the mindset that once kept him progressing. And many men never realize how much they changed until years have already passed. All of these situations follow the same dangerous pattern. They rarely look harmful at the beginning. In fact, most of them feel exciting, comfortable, or emotionally intense in ways that pull you in quickly. That is why so many men ignore the warning signs early. They focus on how good the situation feels in the moment, instead of paying attention to what the situation is slowly becoming underneath the surface. And by the time they finally recognize the problem clearly, they are already emotionally attached. This is how most complicated situations begin, not with obvious danger, but with small decisions that seemed harmless at first. One conversation turns into constant communication. One moment of attraction turns into emotional attachment. One night turns into a deeper connection that slowly starts influencing your thoughts, emotions, routines, and priorities. That gradual shift is what makes these situations difficult to escape later. Another important thing most men fail to understand is that attachment changes judgment. Before intimacy, you can usually think clearly. You notice red flags faster. You recognize unhealthy behavior more easily. But once emotions become involved, logic becomes weaker. You start making excuses for things you would normally walk away from. You tolerate situations you once promised yourself you would avoid. And that is how men slowly lose control without realizing it. What makes this even more dangerous is that patterns repeat themselves. Many men believe they simply had bad luck with certain women, but often the real issue is that they never learned to recognize unhealthy patterns early. Different woman, same behavior. Different situation, same outcome. Until you understand the pattern itself, you keep walking into the same emotional traps wearing different faces. That is why awareness matters more than experience alone. Experience only teaches you something if you are honest enough to study what actually happened. Otherwise, you simply repeat the same mistakes with different people over and over again. The smartest thing a man can do is pay attention early, because early signs are not random. They are previews of what becomes stronger later, once the connection gets deeper, emotionally and physically. Smart men do not move purely based on attraction or opportunity. They understand that self-control is more valuable than temporary excitement, which is why they take time to observe before becoming emotionally or physically involved with anyone. While most men rush into situations because they feel good in the moment, disciplined men slow themselves down long enough to study behavior, patterns, and consistency. That patience protects them from situations that later become emotionally draining or difficult to escape. One thing smart men understand clearly is that attraction alone is never enough reason to move forward. A woman can be beautiful, confident, intelligent, and still carry behaviors that create instability in your life later. That is why they separate emotions from judgment. They do not allow physical attraction to completely override common sense. Even when they feel strong chemistry, they still pay attention to how she handles pressure, how she treats people, how she reacts emotionally, and whether her behavior stays consistent over time. Another important thing is timing. Most men feel pressure to move quickly because they fear losing the opportunity. Smart men think differently. They are comfortable slowing things down because they understand that rushing usually benefits emotions more than logic. They know that once intimacy happens, attachment naturally follows. So instead of acting impulsively, they give themselves enough time to see who the person truly is beneath the excitement of the beginning stage. They also stay focused on their own life. Their goals, routines, discipline, and priorities do not disappear simply because someone enters the picture. They do not suddenly stop working on themselves because a woman gives them attention. That balance is what keeps them emotionally stable and mentally clear. Another difference is boundaries. The moment something feels wrong, they do not ignore it just to keep the connection alive. They are willing to slow down, create distance, or walk away completely if necessary. And that mindset protects them because they understand something many men learn too late. Not every opportunity deserves access to your life, no matter how attractive it looks on the surface. Most men do not realize they are losing control until the situation has already started affecting their peace, their focus, and their direction in life. That is the dangerous part about emotional attachment. It rarely feels harmful in the beginning. It starts small, simple, and exciting. A conversation here, a late-night connection there, a moment that feels harmless at first. Nothing about it seems serious enough to completely change your life. But slowly, without noticing it, the connection begins influencing your decisions more than you intended. Once intimacy enters a situation, everything becomes deeper. Now there are emotions involved. Now there is attachment. Now your thinking starts changing around the connection itself. You begin adjusting your routines, your priorities, and even your mindset based on how things are going with her. And most men never notice how much control they are slowly giving away until they feel emotionally dependent on the situation. That is why discipline matters more than impulse. Every opportunity does not deserve a response. Every attractive woman does not deserve access to your energy, your attention, or your life. Smart men understand that choosing who you become involved with is one of the most important decisions you can make, because the wrong connection can slowly drain your time, your focus, your confidence, and your progress without you fully realizing it until much later. This is not about avoiding women or becoming cold emotionally. It is about becoming selective. It is about understanding that attraction without awareness can lead you into situations that cost more than they give back. And many men only understand that lesson after they have already lost valuable time, energy, and peace trying to fix situations they should have avoided from the beginning. So always think beyond the moment, observe behavior carefully, pay attention to patterns early, and never let temporary emotions make permanent decisions for you. Because at the end of the day, your choices shape your direction, and your direction shapes the outcome of your life. Do well to subscribe because you are important.